Pine needle tea. What a wonderful winter plant. There's not a lot of plants that you can still harvest in the wintertime when you're in the Rockies with the high altitude and snow. But pine, fir, spruce, some juniper berries, a little bit of rose hips, those are still very easy to forage and to find out in the wild. And they have so many benefits. Incredibly wonderful immune booster, especially for the wintertime since it can be harvested this time of year. I find that I always want to have pine needles on hand as they are an expectorant, which thins mucus secretions, especially those in the respiratory system. A decongestant, which is also very helpful to pushing out and moving out any mucus. They are antiseptic, which is tightening. So not only does it taste good, but it's super good for all of your organs and tissues. They have antioxidants, anthocyanins, and so many benefits in just this needle. Now, as you connect to the tree, before you take its medicine, making sure that as you look at the needles, they look healthy and vibrant themselves. Knowing that the older needles do contain more of the vitamin C as well as other medicinal properties, but they do have a stronger taste, where the vibrant needles at the tip, they do have a much more pleasant taste, and they're more mild in their medicinal property, but those are the ones I like to gather the most, especially for my family, to get them to drink the tea willingly. And I only pick about 1 or 2 branches from each tree before I find another tree, connect, so I don't over-harvest or, of course, stress out the plant. Always making sure that, you're being ethical when you're harvesting and gathering. This tree is a ponderosa pine, which we have all over in our backyard. White pine, many spruce, Douglas firs are also wonderful to brew as tea. So if you have any of those around, just make sure you're really able to identify the tree and really find a connection to it as well. Pine needles have 4 times as much vitamin C as freshly squeezed orange juice. However, they don't contain as much vitamin C as rose hips. So as you'll see later on, I do add rose hips and some juniper berries into my tea as well, just to give it some additional vitamin C. And juniper berries also really help with colds. So whenever you gather in nature, it is important to take some time for stillness, a little bit of time to connect with nature, a little bit of time to offer gratitude for the medicine, for the nutrition, for all the things that this earth provides for us. We often take time to connect to something higher than ourselves, but it's also important to ground down and take time to offer gratitude to Mother Earth and her offerings. It doesn't take much, even just a pause for one moment. Now for preparation, it's really easy to prepare pine needle tea. You first strip the needles off of the stem and try to cut them as best you can, just to open up the needles to offer a little bit more of the inner constituents and properties to come out. My son loves to smell the needles and play with them and anything else that I'm preparing. Pine needles always grow in clusters from a single origin point on a branch. And this cluster contains this sheath that attaches them. You want to make sure you pull that off, since it does contain some toxins that you don't want inside of your tea. That is also a good way to recognize if it is a pine, is that the needles will be clustered. Just remember that while all pines are evergreens, not all evergreens are pines. So positively, again, identify those pine trees. Make sure that what you're bringing back is a pine. And then place it into a pot. And here is where I will add some additional things like rose hips for even more vitamin C. And here I'm adding both crushed and the full berry, just to open it up and get some more of the medicinal properties with the broken berry. A couple juniper berries, and not too many, but these are wonderful for gastrointestinal system. Any kind of upset stomach, heartburn, flatulence. antibacterial, antimicrobial. And careful not to boil the needles. Boiling not only destroys vitamin C, but it also releases more of the terpenes in the needles, an organic compound that makes pine smell like pine. And this ends up making it more of like a turpentine tea. So just a couple things to pay attention to is cypress, yew pine, Norfolk Island pine can be highly toxic, and you want to avoid those at all times. So it's really important that you really identify the plants that you are gathering. There are a few sightings that there's a possibility of a miscarriage with lodgepole pine and ponderosa pine, which is what I've gathered here. So if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, just stay away from these and you're completely safe. I love this tea and I hope you do too. Happy warm winter.